Welcome back, Rebels and Star Wars Destiny fans alike. Today, we're going to do a thing I don't much do and talk about spoilers. Well, sort of, I guess. It's really more like a debut or an announcement, but there were cards shown, so it is kind of like a spoilers video. And the cards I'm talking about are for the new set, Star Wars Legacies. This is now the fourth set coming from Fantasy Flight Games for Star Wars Destiny, and it seems like they're rewinding the clock back to like the New Hope era to bring us Boba Fett and a young version of Luke Skywalker and Han Solo. We saw quite a few cards in the reveal and also learned about a new mechanic, or actually several new mechanics. So let's take a look at this all and chat about it just a little bit. Don't go anywhere because I'd also love to hear what you have to say in response to what I'm saying in the comments below after you've gotten through this one. Be right back. So FFG is plugging their new set already, huh? You know, it's funny because they didn't even announce the release of the last one on their website. Before this article on Star Wars Legacies, the previous article that was related to Destiny was actually the yellow cards reveal. So that's a little weird, but we're here anyway. So let's begin by talking about three new mechanics they're going to be bringing to the game before we get into anything else. And the first one that they introduced us to is this new indirect damage, and this is the symbol for it over here. And this is what they had to say about it. Indirect damage allows you to force an opponent to deal that much damage to their characters distributed as they wish, allowing them to split it up among multiple characters. So this is a really interesting idea, and I have sort of an idea of why they did this. The primary reason in my mind is because they see themselves running out of room to innovate just melee and ranged damage numbers or amounts or values, right, in the future and in the very near future too. I mean, we're already stuck with just a six-sided die, and you need to add more symbols to keep things fresh and open up the design space a little more. So, and they've already hit six, the actual value six on things like the Sonic Cannon already. And we've had a 5 on the ATST and also on the Iron Rifle. So I think they're wanting to introduce this new damage type to kind of enhance their variety a bit when they're making new cards. Doing that brings both black sides and blue sides into the mix and a third damage type to boot. So, that can be pretty cool. Personally, I've wanted a card draw side to offset the discard side, but, whatever. I can keep dreaming, right? And I can understand why they would want to avoid something like that because I feel like it might be dreadfully overpowered to abuse with something like C-3PO. But anyway, the first thought that comes to mind regarding how indirect damage fits into the game is whether this will be considered a damage die just like ranged and melee for the purposes of removing or resolving dice. For example, can I guardian an indirect damage die? I think you should be able to, but we will see on what the ruling is going to be going forward. On the same token, I wonder if all the cards that previously interacted with damage die or of ranged or melee will also be eroded or retconned to include indirect damage as a possible removal type. So can Honor Guard, for example, remove indirect damage? I also think so, but FFG could say otherwise, right? I suppose we'll see. I wonder if they'll make like exceptions for certain cards or whatever. I don't think that they're going to complicate it. Honestly, I think they're going to do it straight ahead. But it's a question that just kind of came to mind, and I wanted to kind of put that out there, get some feelers on it. So the other thing I wanted to say is that about under indirect damage is that I hope there are enough decent cards to group with the existing ones that will let us make a damage control deck. So I just did my video series on the control archetype, right? And I'm hoping that cards like Bosk and Relentless Pursuit and those sorts of cards can be formed into sort of an aggro control variant deck that lets us manipulate where all that indirect damage is being applied in some way. I think it actually would be a super cool deck, and it would be really nice to have something like that in the meta if for deck building variety, if nothing else. Yet another mechanic being added to the game, and this time it makes very plain sense, is that of the power action, which is coming to characters and maybe some other cards too. And it's an ability that you can only use once per round. This is quite interesting actually, and may be a term that they're introducing prior to the FAQ errata that everyone's been whispering is coming soon for FN2199 and Awakening's Ray maybe. And slapping power action on those cards would instantly stop the shenanigans that this game has been, dealing with these decks for a long, long time now. I wonder, is this gonna level the playing field overnight? And my first instinct is to say no. That seems really unlikely, but it moves villains and heroes a bit closer towards some agreed upon middle ground by the developers. I think that the power action is a really neat idea all around. And with this new keyword at the disposal, I think we've got some more balanced games ahead. At least, again, that's sort of what my gut tells me. All right, I've got a big smile on my face because I am absolutely in love with this third mechanic, and I hope that they implement this really, really well and give us a wide variety of them. And the mechanic I'm talking about is plots, and I can see them having really, really interesting impacts on the game. They showed us just two of them in the article, and I'm going to show you those in a minute. And they do change things for sure. And, this is their way of filling those non 30-point decks, that have a small point gap. And I think it's a pretty neat idea, but, not needed necessarily, but hell, why not? So let's take a look and talk about these really briefly. So the first one that they showed us was espionage, and this is a 1-point plot that says after setup, discard the top card from each deck. So that also is your deck, and that can be kind of a hurtful thing if you top deck a really bad card off your deck. A really bad in that you don't want to lose that card, or an opponent's really good card off the top of their deck. And really, everyone starts with 29 cards now, right? So this might be like a card that maybe some mill decks want to use, just to get an extra edge or something like that. The second one they showed us was Profitable Connection, and this one is a 3-pointer, which lets you start the game with a third resource, just like Lando, except without having to run Lando. So beware for the folks that are playing against Jabba Unkar decks, because those are Crime Lord decks, and starting with 3 resources is nothing to scoff at. Anyway, I think that it was really good overall that they showed us these 2 cards, because this is a 1-point plot and a 3-point plot, and it gives us an idea what they consider a minor and a major plot card. I can't imagine they're going to print any plots worth more than 3 points, but, they can do whatever they want, right? And the other thing is, you can only choose one plot to bring to the game, just like a Battlefield, so I wonder what kind of impact that's going to have. Am I going to design my characters around a plot, or am I going to just take my characters and look for a plot that might fit, Also, I wonder what they consider a 2-point plot. It brings into question if there's going to be plots that, you can like discard to reroll a die or multiple dice once per game or something like that, It also brings into question whether there's going to be cards that control plots, like removal cards that discard your plot, or cards that swap plots or manipulate plots in some way, or disable plots, something like that. Or maybe there'll be battlefields that are tied to certain plots or interact with certain plots and have some synergy with them, These are the thoughts that go through my head, and it's the kind of stuff that really no one is talking about, And to wrap up my feelings on plots, I think they are great for the game, potentially. I want to see more. This totally has me interested big time, and I think that players of all skill levels are going to want to look at these things and how they impact the game, especially the competitive players, because you're going to be looking for, a plot that gives you just that little more, that slight edge against another deck. So plots, man, this is like really super exciting stuff. All right, so let's take a look at some of these characters that were spoiled. The first one up is Dr. Afra. She's a yellow villain. She's got 10 health, 11/14 cost, and 2 interesting abilities. The first one reads, the cost of the first droid you play each round is decreased by 1. I guess that means ID9 secret droids too, right? Interesting. The second one reads, after you deal indirect damage to yourself, you may draw a card. All right, it's kind of hard to say how that's going to play into things, but it doesn't sound too bad. So anyway, what this suggests to me is that there's going to be some mechanics that deal indirect damage to yourself, whatever that means. Does that mean that a character... Now, when it says yourself here, does that mean a character you have or this specific card? This is why FFG really, really badly needs templating. You don't deal damage to yourself in Destiny. We don't have life totals like in Magic the Gathering. Or is that something they're adding? I mean, it's tough to say. I kind of doubt it. That really doesn't seem like in the spirit of this game. Maybe yourself. Maybe the word yourself should be replaced with any card you control, or any character you control. And I think that would clarify that a little bit better. FFG, are you listening? Because this is really big. And I guess we should talk about her die as well. She's got a 2 ranged for 1 resource, 2 indirect damage, 1 discard. She produces 2 shields. That's pretty good. And 1 resource, right, which is fairly standard. I mean, personally, I'm not really excited about her. I didn't read any of her stuff. I think she was an Evader comic. Um, Nor do I think she would see a lot of play in the current meta, but, you know, I don't know, maybe like in a Seven Sister deck. I mean, I don't know. Can we even make that work? I think we could. It probably would be kind of underpowered, but anyway, I see the 2 indirect damage side on her die, so that is kind of interesting. It just kind of seems like she's pretty low impact, but there is a whole set coming right alongside her, right? So really, we shouldn't be too judgmental. Also, I should point out that she is a legendary, so maybe FFG has bigger plans for mechanics around this card than we know yet. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. All right, that thing I just said about not being too judgmental, I'm going to take that back, all right? Because this Obi-Wan is good no matter what sets you're talking about. This is the guy that we wanted in Spirit of Rebellion, not the old man Kenobi who's trying to save somebody's life by being the most overcosted guardian in the entire freaking game. This guy, he is borderline beastly. He's got 2 3 sides and an activated ability that just gives him a shield for nothing. He just gets it. No questions asked. And I love this guy. He's got a good point cost that gives him some room for those 11 cost elites. You know, maybe we'll get something other than Maz, you know. He makes a lot of shields. All his sides are good. He doesn't have a wonky focus side like Luke does. He's just great. And I think he's going to see some play if we can get a good pairing for him, you know. Or if perhaps there's like, you know, maybe like an 8 and a 7 cost that work well with him and you run him as solo die. But, you know, it probably feels pretty bad to run him as a 1 die just like it does with other Obi or Luke, the original Luke. You know, I also want to point out that he's only a rare. Obi-Wan Kenobi Jedi Master is not a legendary. This feels almost like a slap in the face to his fans. But overall, I think he's a really good card. He produces boatloads of shields, and you know that 3 melee and 3 melee for a resource side, that is really solid for a character who's bringing a 15-point die, and only 4 points more for the second die, which, you know, I mentioned this on the IRABL podcast, and I wanted to mention it here as well. That's really crazy when you think about how FFG has costed the second die for Luke or the second die for the other Obi-Wan at 5 points. It's kind of like they're saying, hey, let's throw heroes a bone, or let's start looking at these point costs for the second die a little differently. So I feel like we're getting a little bit of a discount here, despite having, you know, the resource pay side and there only being 2 damage sides here. I think that that's really, really good. Like, I think that's really good that they're looking at these point values and changing them up, making them cheaper. That's what we need for heroes. All right, next up, we've got someone that's, you know, not super popular, but he's certainly part of the old school canon, and that's Wedge Antilles. Wedge is taking sweet advantage of that new indirect damage symbol, and the article is alluding to the fact that, you know, he's going to be paired with vehicles like the Resistance Bomber that also do indirect damage so that he can modify them and whatnot. He's also got a power action on him, which reads, turn one of your vehicle die to any side, and that's way better than what General Veers does, right? You don't lose a die to do that. That's pretty cool. Yep, he's the new pilot that we're going to want in our vehicle decks, I guess. So let's see, you know, maybe we can run Hera at 12 elite, Wedge single die at 11, and a rookie pilot. Yeah, that works. That makes 30 points. So maybe the vehicle meta deck continues to grow. I mean, I guess we'll see when this, you know, comes out, you know. Like, you know, other red pilots, you know, he's also bringing a disrupt side, and he's bringing that occasional resource as well. So all around, you know, he's pretty well rounded, kind of what you would expect. He's 11 health again. You know, the health has been creeping up little by little. I think Empire at War was definitely a move in the right direction as far as health is concerned, you know, for both heroes and for villains. And 11 for an 11-15, that's what we want, you know. And I really like that he's got the 11, you know, that 11 HP, you know. It's pushing out, looking at stuff like this. New characters can survive the old meta, right? And that's what raising point value or HP values really, really means, because you want to be able to push out stuff like POMAS. You want to extend the length of a game a tiny bit and also open up some higher damage sides here and there. That's what we were talking about earlier. Like, the values can only get so high because sooner or later you're just going to kill two characters in a single round, and that's not going to be, a lot of fun. So you want more HP, but you also don't want it to get too much out of hand. You want to rein some things in, and Wedge is bringing a pretty solid value there. Also, I'm not sure if you noticed it up to this point. This is the third character we're looking at, but these characters, they now have subtypes. So he's character dash pilot, right? And Obi was character Jedi, and Afra was character scoundrel. It's no longer just character, huh? So I wonder if and how that will play into things at all. If there's going to be some new mechanics, or if they're going to create specific cards that are like, activate all your Jedis at once, like some blue card, keeps the brain going, looking at stuff like this and being observant about these cards. So I think that, this is another thing. More text they put on here, more cards they can make to interact with things. So that's really cool. And yeah, glad to see Wedge. Glad to see some additional mechanics being added to cards. All right, so I've been spending more time over on this explanation screen because, I knew we were going to be moving through all these characters, and I wasn't sure if I was going to like start pairing them up or whatnot. But I'm sorry if you missed my face, all right? You should take a picture because it'll last longer. Also, then you can frame it, and then you can like hunt me down at some tournament and ask me to sign it. I always carry like a variety of Sharpies in a messenger bag for just such occasions. Well, I mean, I guess that's one reason, but anyway, so let's look at these two villains that are going to be in the starter set accompanying Legacies. Good old Boba Fett and a veteran Stormtrooper. That Stormtrooper, he's all grown up now, right? He's got a nice homage here to the old Star Wars once again, and I am like in love with this. So he's got 9 health. He's worth 9 points now too. Still can't hit the broadside of a barn, but that's okay. And he's got a fair die. He's got 3 damage sides here. He's got a 1 range, a 2 range, and instead of that old 2 range for a buck side, he's got 3 indirect damage. So that's pretty cool, but obviously he's not the star of the show. Boba Fett is, and people have wanted Boba Fett. Everyone's wanted to see his card, and I've wanted to see his card. So here it is right now. He's not the most impressive character that we've seen. He's only got 2 damage sides, but he's got a special that does something like Force Throw without removing the die. It's probably better than Chewbacca's special at least, and it can literally make a chance cube smack you for 3, right? Which is pretty cool because the text on it says deal damage to a character equal to the value showing on a die, right? So there you go. It's like, if he chucks that chance cube at you, it's kind of like getting hit with the sharp corner of it or something. I don't know. It seems like it could be pretty strong. And of course, he's got 11 health. So at 12-16 again, we're seeing a bit more HP still than even Django was, who was 10 for the same exact cost. This is good stuff, and I think that players will be happy to play him somewhere, even if he's not the most powerful character coming to the set, because he's Boba Fett, and people are going to want to play Boba Fett. All right, so while we're here, we've got to talk about this little bromance going on over here. Young Luke and an even younger Han Solo, and the art, honestly, on Han Solo is terrible, by the way. I'm not even sure if that's Han Solo. I don't know who that is. But anyway, here we've got a very young Luke, probably still sipping on Peru's blue milk on the reg, but he's got some skills with a blaster. I like how, he also doesn't have a character subtype like we've been pointing out. It's just character like before. He's literally nothing special right now. He just wants to go to Tachi Station and pick up some power converters, and that's his entire life, But his die is there for those forced misdirection plays. I think his obvious pairing without, seeing plots or any other cards is probably Chirrut, or maybe like a 1-die Ray and like a 7-coster. Who knows, It'll depend on what comes out with him. His power action is a little underwhelming because it's basically 2 damage for $2. Maybe you can finish someone off if he's, he got partners making cash for him. This is still Blue Hero we're talking about, folks. And unless Legacies is going to bring in some other new mechanic or cards that let Blue Hero make some cash, you're probably never really going to use this power ability, or you might use it once in a game, literally to finish off a character if you have lots of money. The Han Solo here, in my opinion, is definitely a downgrade from his older self. He does less damage. He discards instead of disrupts, but you can run him at elite for the cost of the old Han at 1 die. Still, he's got the same HP as him too, which is like, all right, well, I mean, that's at least they didn't reduce it, right? The cool thing about it is he has an activated ability which allows him to reroll any die. So it's a little better than Jabba's, which only allows you to reroll a yellow die, and it can be on either side of the table, right? Just like Jabba's. So that can be kind of interesting, and it gives him some kind of timing to his plays. You know, I wonder if there's anything special that we'll want to use that for. In the set aside, from the aside from the usual stuff, maybe you want to re-roll your chance cube die that rolled a blank on him or something like that. Like that could be kind of useful. Again, he's no Jabba the Hutt. His die is definitely not as strong, but maybe there's something there for him. Yeah, maybe. I mean, his point cost certainly opens up some additional, character grouping. So maybe someone will find something that, you might like to run him in. Aha! So here are the cards that talk about indirect damage. Yes, we found them. All right. So there are 3 cards to talk about, and they give us some insight into what FFG is thinking that we're going to do with that indirect damage. So let's start on the left side here, and the BT-1 droid is pretty neat and works pretty well with the bubble shield support on the right, I think. Basically, it's hatred in droid form, but you can't choose, to do it. It's actually mandatory, so you're going to take a damage, and you're going to force your opponent to assign an indirect damage. Also, his die is very, very strong. He's got 4 damage sides for a 2-cost droid. That's like bonkers, and one of them is a 3-side for a resource. And remember also that Afra lets you reduce the cost of the first droid you play by 1 each round. So you can play this guy for 1 resource if he's the first droid you play that round. That might be one of the best buy-ins in the history of this game for the die that you're getting right there. I guess we'll see, how that plays out. The bubble shield on the right is a support, and it could be really interesting. It's a 1-cost indirect damage meat shield with 3 health, essentially. And I like how they're already expanding on the concept by presenting ways that we feel it will be useful to use. It's just, you look at a card like this and you wonder, am I actually going to care about using this card? Do I want to not apply this damage, or am I going to create a deck that has lots of shields that I can just, absorb this damage? It'll be interesting to see, again, how that plays out. And the event in the middle here is called Delve, and it's a 3-cost yellow villain event, and it reads, deal 1 indirect damage to yourself to play a support or upgrade from your hand for free. I mean, if you're already paying 3 resources and taking a damage on something, you're not really playing a support or upgrade for free, are you? I feel like someone over at FFG needs a math lesson, or they need to open the dictionary and read what the definition of free is, because this is not it. I mean, if you're playing something that's like 6 costs, you're kind of just playing half the cost, and it just seems oddly worded again, and it does not seem like a very good card at first glance. All right, now there's just one more card that I want to take a deeper look at, and this thing is a beast of a card at its cost, and I'm like blown away by the power creep on this thing. No, it's not Obi-Wan himself. We already talked about him, although he is good in my book. It's actually his new lightsaber, and wow. For 3 costs, we're getting this bad boy. It makes shields like crazy. And the special on this thing is nuts. You give attached character 1 shield. Then you deal unblockable damage to a character equal to the number of shields on attached character. This thing is very, very good on Obi-Wan, but it's even better on Qui-Gon Jinn. Aren't we always talking about Qui-Gon Jinn? It's like every set we come back to this guy, and it's because he's good. And FFG keeps giving us things to make shields better and better. I love this lightsaber. I cannot wait to get my hands on it. Poo-poo it all you want because it doesn't have redeploy on it. I don't even care. Also, it's more legendary than Obi-Wan himself, right? So we gotta have it. Okie dokie, so those are my thoughts on the new set that was just announced. I am super excited for new mechanics to talk about because that is what this channel really tries to focus on and break down. The addition of the plots and this new indirect damage type, along with the limitation that power action is bringing to the game, are all working towards something. And I think this is kind of a lot of new mechanics to add at once. So I hope that they've really thought this through and that things do work well together and that this gets play tested thoroughly. But we'll all know that in time, I guess. So I hope you enjoyed this sort of detailed overview of the new stuff that we saw in the Legacies article. Stay tuned to the channel over the next few days for an extra bit of stuff regarding advanced strategies. I'm still not happy with how the script and explanation for the Mulligan statistics info is turning out. So that one's still going to be worked on, and I'm going to try to get it out maybe the end of the weekend, definitely early next week. So just be patient. I'm really sorry about that, guys. But I'm giving you this video to hold you over, right? Also, if you aren't already following Jedi Geek Girl on Facebook, you should be. She was one of the former hosts of the Chance Cube podcast, and now she has her own podcast called I Rebel, and she's recruited me into her rebellion. I was actually a guest on the most recent episode of her podcast, which actually is already live now, and you can find it on SoundCloud and iTunes and another service that she's got going as well. Search for I Rebel Podcast on Facebook to find her page, and you can get the scoop on all that stuff. All right, well, that's all for now, and I'll see you guys in the near future with another tactical discussion on Star Wars Destiny. May the Force be with you.